My name is Alex Walker-Griffin. I live in Hercules, California. I happen to be the mayor of the city. I was elected to the city council in 2020, and this is past December in 2022 now. I became the mayor of the city, and I'm a proud Contra Costa College alumni. Prior to attending Contra Costa College, I actually started at DVC College, and I started there for a semester, and then unfortunately my father passed away. And I decided, I didn't want to make that travel all the way to and from Pleasant Hill to Hercules. So I went over to CCC. And outside of being the mayor, I'm a lobbyist for a law firm, I'm a reporter, and I serve in the National Guard. No, absolutely not. Politics was really never in the books. I mean, I got interested in politics when I was younger, around 10 years old, but I never really truly saw myself actually being a part of it until probably the end of high school. And there was this lady named Stacy Martin who really encouraged me to, start thinking about getting involved. At the time, me and my friends were a part of this organization called Junior Achievement, and they do a lot of business stuff for high school students and teaching how to get into that world. But simultaneously, as I would meet people in the business world, I would start to meet people that overlap into politics. Dr. Harder at the time, who was the old superintendent in my school district, he said, "Well, Alex, what do you want to do when you graduate from high school?" I said, "Well, I'd like to get into politics and see how that kind of works out." And he said, "Take my card and call me on Monday." So I called him on Monday, and he was like, "Have you ever interned for a member of Congress?" And I said, "Absolutely not. Never done it." And so he connected me with Congressman DeSaulnier's people, who Congressman DeSaulnier represents most of Contra Costa County, and I ended up interning for him. What made me decide I wanted to get involved with the city was as I would start to grow my network out and I'd hear what other cities were doing, largely through the community college grapevine, I'd be like, well, Hercules is in last place. So I got to do something about it. So eventually I decided, I'm going to get involved in the city, and then decided to run for office. I got to CCC, that's where I started to get involved. And it was actually by accident. So my professor, Dr. Gonzalez, it was at the end of class one day, and she knew that I wanted to get involved in politics more and just be in an advocacy position. And she said, "Why don't you join ASU?" ASU was actually the Associated Student Union on campus, and I got involved with it. At first, I became a senator, and then my friends talked me into running for vice president. And after saying I was done being the vice president, I'm never doing this again, somehow I ended up becoming the student body president for 2 years. But simultaneously, while serving as the vice president, I was the president of community organizing and political action. So that's a club on campus, and you can kind of think of it as the political club on campus. And so with the community colleges, they're tied to an organization called SSCCC, the Student Center for California Community Colleges. And in that capacity, when I became Contra Costa's delegate, I started networking with other colleges throughout the state. It wasn't just DVC and LMC at this point. I'm talking to people in El Centro, people up north in Susanville, and starting to get different perspectives as to what colleges are dealing with and some of the problems that they have, and really how that kind of translates into my policy now. Midway through my time as a student body president, I got appointed to the California Community College Board of Governors. Most people know the Board of Governors for the Community College Promise Grant, or the Board of Governors Fee Waiver, as it used to be called. But once I got into that position, and I would have to travel statewide, one day I'm in the desert, next day I'm in Santa Barbara, hearing about these different community issues, it really started to make me kind of formulate, all right, if we're going to tackle an issue, one, it can't be one-sided, but at the same time, you got to kind of get that holistic perspective. And I think the best quality that I learned from the Board of Governors and just being a student body president is understanding inequities. Because, again, in some of these spaces, I wouldn't be around a lot of people who are from Black and brown communities. But being at CCC, you serve so many underserved people. It's just something that I cannot not remember, And so when I go behind the dais today, most of the items that I brought up are because of experiences and memories that I have from my time in student government. I am actually California's first generation Z mayor. In 2020, it was a huge wave of Gen Z electeds to California. So I'm proud to be one of the inaugural holders for that. But I think the best way, and there's a lot of movement with it right now, but the best way to get more young people involved is talk about the issues that are relevant to them. So, for example, a lot of members of Congress or just people run for higher office, they run on very basic platforms. We'll use the city, for example. They run on public safety, economic development here in town, and something about, maybe if you're lucky, something about kids. For a lot of young people, that doesn't resonate. But when you start talking about home ownership or partnering with the schools that you grew up in, or maybe the environment, stuff that you and I, quite frankly, have to think about, long term, then that's something that's going to be more attractive to a lot of young people. Because the thing about us young people, we understand the issues of yesterday, but we're kind of looking forward to the issues of tomorrow and the issues of today, for example, with the environment or homeowner affordability. Yeah, public safety is going to be great, but I'm a part of a generation that can't afford to buy a home. I mean, I feel like we're both Gen Zers. We're the generation that gets nothing but bad news. And so, if you want it to resonate with us, you got to speak to us. You got to speak our language. Meet us where we are. Why is I think about my early community college journey, because community college was the only opportunity really for me because I did horrible in high school. Up until my junior year, I had straight F's consistently. So there wasn't many four-year options out there. And so I would always bring myself down. And there's a huge stigma against community colleges. It's for the people who almost fell out of college or it's not really college. Even now I still hear that where it's like, oh, you're finally transferring into your four-year college, as if the past 2 years didn't matter or however long. So I think when it comes to that award, the big thing that I think people have to keep in mind is that it's seeing yourself in a position that you may not have seen yourself in, and realizing the opportunities that are there that may oftentimes get overlooked, and realizing that you're still doing great work regardless of the institution that you're in. I mean, coming from just CCC, the amount of students that I would see that were undocumented that did not, yes, their immigration status was a big issue, but that didn't let it stop them from achieving their goals. Or maybe the returning mom who's coming back to school, the returning father, or in some cases incarcerated students, students who did their time in our criminal justice system and said, I'm going to try to do better next time I'm back when I'm outside. And so I think that by giving that award, it shows that anything is possible, and the community colleges are the best reflection of California and the possibilities of what we have to offer. And thinking about my experience with it started really early on with Dr. Gonzalez. I mean, for her to recommend me going to ASU, and at that point, I'd only known her for a couple of weeks. That was instrumental to my success, because without that, none of this stuff would have ever happened. And then people like Joel Nicholson Shanks on campus, who was our advisor when I was in ASU, people like him, I could call on to for whatever I needed. And then to even build relationships with just about every single dean, every single professor, it was crazy just being able to just text Chancellor Metazada and be like, hey, I need something, and then in less than 20 minutes or seconds later, she answers my request. And as I remember just walking around campus and just seeing all the deans, the teachers or the professors, and even Moses just going up and just talking to people, having conversations. And, when I kind of take a step back and I would talk to other colleges, especially like the UCs or the CSUs, that wouldn't happen. And I think that that's what makes CCC such a special place, is because, listen, community college professors are not in it for the money. It's a rewarding career, I imagine, but it's definitely not for the money. And when you see the amount of heart and dedication that goes into what these professors and what these deans are putting into their students, it's really reflective of it. I mean, I'll never forget when it was my graduation at CCC, seeing the amount of tears that were flowing out of people's eyes. That was just a testament of what these professors were doing to change people's lives. I mean, one class I'll never forget, it was my sociology class. The gentleman to the right of me was in prison, and then the lady to the next to me, she was out of school for 15 years because she was raising her family. And I'll never forget, I was still the president at the time, just thinking, how many other places in the world could you possibly have this happen, where people said, you know what, I'm going to try to better myself, and here's the space. And my professor, Dr. Cromartie, was all inclusive. Whatever you needed, he helped you out. And again, that's just such a testament to the culture that the college has. The first one would definitely be when I was still a student body president. Me and Joel hashed this out one day in his office, because we were talking about, all right, what's like a big equity issue, and that we can just like serve students with. We're like, all right, we narrowed it down. Okay, the document's huge. Okay, parents are huge, but the big thing that was the big bridge was low income. And so we're like, all right, let's think of something that we can do to try to tackle that. And then we said, okay, well, what time are people usually on campus? And like, all right, the morning, about this time is when you'd see the majority of campus, and then around 12:30, you start seeing the population dying down. So we came up with this idea with the free breakfast, free school supplies, and bus pass program. And I remember we were talking about it in his office, and I remember thinking, if we can just fund this for a semester, especially the free breakfast program, we'll be good to go. Just as a test pilot. And so we worked with Chef Nader over in the culinary department to just see, okay, we're going to give you X. How much do you need to just make this happen for a semester? He said, we'll make it happen. And then after the first semester, we realized it was success. And then it just kept going on. And then it was actually, I was on a CCC's Instagram page, and I saw that the program was still continuing. And I just thought that was like the coolest thing ever. I was like, wow, it's something like, me and the homies ended up getting going, and it's still there to this day. And on the Board of Governors, it was a combination of Calbright was one, but the free tuition for the first 2 years is definitely like a hallmark of like something I'll always be proud of. And I was the lead student on that at the time. I was the only student on the Board of Governors. And so it was crazy having some of these meetings with the legislature and different legislative members and telling them like about issues about the community college. And some of these cats are still members to this day. And they didn't truly understand the issues. And so I'm telling them like, community colleges don't have the endowment, say like Stanford and UC Berkeley have, which means less financial aid, less opportunity to stay in school. But I'll never forget when we took that vote to make community college tuition free. And, we did the vote, and I remember thinking, wow, I was a part of that. But it didn't really hit me that it was actually like a real thing until my sister signed up for it a couple years down the road, and like friends and their siblings started signing up for it. I was like, wow, I had a part in that, but it would have never started if I just did not stumble into CCC. Anything that I can say to my fellow community college alumni, the community college system is not perfect, and definitely there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. Cost alumni and just all the community college students out there, the world is your oyster. And when I look back on it now, it's amazing to see all the adversities that community college students have gone through and have done everything about this is not just the future of California, but it's the present of California, and it's also the future of our nation. So if you have any alumni that ever need any help with anything, I'm happy to extend my hand and be of service. And the world's their oyster, so go after it. I'm happy to help and be here to cheer them on.